Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWAS NBA Friday night. We got 9 games on the board. As of right now, I don't have a ton of action open. There's a few bets I have my eyes on. We'll go through all of them. As far as Thursday night, I went 4-0. 4-0 night on Thursday. It makes back-to-back winning nights. Hopefully the positivity continues. January, February, and March was my most profitable quarter by far last year, so hopefully this is the start of something. Last couple months haven't been great for me, so nice to have a 4-0 night. So yeah, NBA Friday night, 9 games on the board. Let's do it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. Orlando on the road in Boston. The Celtics are laying 12.5. Total sitting at 210.5 in this one. Obviously, we got some injuries on the Magic side. We'll talk about that in a second. Projected score 107.2 to 98.9. Magic have been playing some defense. The main story here is the Celtics offense, or the lack of offense recently. In the last 5 games, the defending champion, Boston Celtics, are 27th in offensive rating. So for whatever reason, the Celtics shots are just not falling right now. That being said, the current state of the Orlando Magic team with all the injuries, I mean, this shouldn't be the toughest matchup for the Celtics. They did just lose to the Raptors, though. It was looking like there was a chance Jalen Suggs and Batadze were going to return for this one. They have both been ruled out. So still no Franz Wagner, obviously. No Suggs, no Batadze, no Gary Harris. So Orlando definitely still shorthanded here, and they just played their last game against the Bucks with no Jalen Suggs and no Batadze, and it was ugly. I mean, Milwaukee pretty much did whatever they wanted in that game. Offensive rating over 116. Defensive rating under 89 is crazy. Orlando couldn't do shit offensively in the game. Even a rebound rate over 59%. So the Bucks just dominated every facet of that basketball game with no Suggs and no Batadze out there. So not a good start here for Orlando, and they're on the road in Boston against a Celtics team that's going to be at full strength. Nobody on the injury report for the Boston Celtics. The thing is, we're talking about laying 12.5 points here with a team that just straight up is not making shots. In their last 5 games, the Celtics are 1-4 against the spread, 2-3 straight up. Look at the 3-point percentage, 28.1% in their last 5 games. This is an offense that's reliant on sinking 3-point shots. They're not hitting 3-point shots. In fact, they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the NBA in the last couple weeks. And this Orlando defense, I mean, they've been injured all year. These injuries aren't new. They're still excellent at putting pressure on the perimeter. In the last 10 games, they're second in defensive frequency above the break, meaning they put a ton of pressure on the perimeter. They do not let their opponents get those 3-point shots off. This might not be the best matchup for the Celtics. I mean, they just played the Raptors, who have a terrible perimeter defense. That should be the defense Boston snapped their shooting slump, right? They play the Raptors. How do you not sink threes on the Raptors? And they lost outright to Toronto. So part of me thinks, I mean, this Celtics offense looks so bad they can't get their shots to fall. If you can't hit threes against Toronto, I really don't know how I could possibly lay 12.5 points. I know some people are a bit hesitant to bet on the Magic away from Orlando, and I get it. They're much better at home on the season, 9-11-1 against the spread, 9-12 straight up on the road. So yeah, they're not a great road team, but it's not absolutely terrible. I mean, look at the Boston side. The Celtics at home this year are 7-14 against the spread. So if you've been betting the Celtics at home, you are burning through money this year. I bet Orlando at plus 11. I thought there was a chance Suggs or Batadze, maybe even both, were going to come back. I was wrong. They both got ruled out, so I kind of got screwed there. My pick for this game would still be the Magic. Like I said, I do have a bet open, but I don't really like it. I got it at plus 11. I don't know how you can lay that big of a number with Boston the way they're playing right now. So my pick for this game would be Orlando. With the current injury report, it would probably be a pass. I'll say Magic or pass. Next game up. Minnesota's on the road at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks are laying 3.5 points here. Total sitting at 221.5. Let's take a look at this matchup. We got a projected score of 109.5, 102 in favor of the Knicks. Both of these offenses humming. And as far as the Knicks, that's not new. Knicks have been one of the best offenses in the NBA pretty much this entire season. They're second in offensive rating on the year, second in offensive rating in their last 5 games. But Minnesota's starting to hit some shots as well. We'll talk about it in a second. Let's start with some injury reports. Karl Anthony Towns listed as questionable. Obviously, that's huge. We need to know if Towns is going to be playing. He just missed the last game against Philly. Knicks did win the game. Thank God Sixers covered that +7. It was my favorite bet of the night. The Knicks ended up winning 125-119. The defense was a problem, though. Offense was fine without Towns. Over 127 offensive rating in the game. Defensive rating over 122 is ugly. And there's a pattern forming here. With Towns on the court, with Towns off the court, it doesn't matter. The Knicks defense doesn't look very good. In their last 8 games, they have a defensive rating over 117, over 58% opponent effective field goal percentage. The Knicks are not playing good defense right now. And I mentioned before, this Timberwolves offense is starting to hit some shots. Look at their last 3 games, over 59% effective field goal percentage, over 62% true shooting percentage, over 41% three-point percentage. Minnesota's been hitting their shots recently. I mean, I know it's only a 3-game sample size, but look at that in comparison to the previous 4 games. 51% effective field goal percentage. I know you might look at the opponents on the left side here and say Memphis, not a great defensive team. Washington, a terrible defensive team. Golden State struggling. But you know what? The way the Knicks defense is playing, just strictly on the defensive side of the ball, you can throw the Knicks defense right on this list. The Knicks aren't playing the best defense right now, specifically on the 3-point line. In the last 10 games, the Knicks are 26th in defensive efficiency against the above-the-break 3-point shot. That happens to be where Minnesota takes a lot of shots from. 6th in frequency, 1st in efficiency. So Minnesota should have some opportunities to hit some outside shots in this one. Here's the problem. DiVincenzo's been ruled out. No DiVincenzo in this one for Minnesota. And the reason that's a problem is he leads the team by far in shot attempts from above the break. Over 5.5 shot attempts per game from out there. So the area where I liked Minnesota to exploit the Knicks defense, the main guy who takes the most shots from out there isn't active. Now, I do still think Minnesota is able to hit some threes on the Knicks, and I do still think they're able to score some points on the Knicks because the defense hasn't been very good. But as a whole, not having DiVincenzo might hurt. I'm not even the biggest DiVincenzo fan. Just in this particular matchup, I think Minnesota would really like to have him out there. Not to mention it's a revenge game. Returning to Madison Square Garden, he was beefing with Josh Hart. I would imagine DiVincenzo would have been extra motivated for this one. So yeah, as a whole on that side of the ball, I don't really trust the Knicks defense right now. Minnesota's been hitting some shots. They should be able to score some points in this one. But on the other side, this is where the value shifts all the way over to the New York side. You look at the Minnesota defense over the last few weeks, numbers look okay. They look fine. But if you isolate it to just when they see good offenses, it doesn't look good at all. In their last 3 games against top offenses, the Boston game, Oklahoma City, Memphis, defensive rating over 124, forced turnover rate under 10%, defensive rebounding rate looks like shit. So this Minnesota defense, they look great when they see bad offenses, but when they see good offenses, I don't trust them nearly as much. And the Knicks are most definitely a good offense. In fact, they're one of the best offenses in the NBA. Last game against the Sixers, no Karl Anthony Towns, one of their most important offensive pieces, didn't matter. They still lit it up. Look at their last 3 games. Towns didn't play in one of these. Over 128 offensive rating, over 63% effective field goal percentage. So, I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, I have a lot of questions for this Knicks team. But as far as scoring points, this Knicks team has been pretty consistent. Like I said, Minnesota's defense, I don't trust them as much against these good offenses. So I think the Knicks offensively should be fine. So where does that leave us in terms of placing a bet? You would think that means over, right? I like Minnesota to hit some shots against a shaky Knicks defense. I like the Knicks offense to go off because they always do, and Minnesota's defense is a little bit vulnerable. Here's the problem. Here's why I can't pull the trigger on an over. Look at the pace. In the last 10 games, Minnesota 28th in pace, 25th in the last 5 games. The Knicks 18th and 24th. Kind of tough to pull a trigger on an over 221 if we're expecting a slow-paced basketball game. So I do like the over. That would be my bet for this game if I was to place a bet. Problem is that slow pace is scaring me. So kind of like the over, kind of like the Knicks. So my picks for this game would be over 221 or Knicks minus 3.5. Next game, Toronto on the road in Milwaukee. The Bucks are laying 11.5 or 12 depending on your sportsbook. Total sitting at pretty much 230. Projected score 116.3 to 107.5. Take a look at some recent production. Obviously, the Bucks have been a better team than the Raptors. You don't need me to tell you that. That being said, we do have to cut the Raptors a little bit of slack here. On the season, they played the second strongest schedule in the NBA. So the Raptors have been through the gauntlet this year. Also in the last 10 games, second strongest schedule in the NBA. In the last 5 games, first. So this Raptors team just can't seem to catch a break. As I'm sure you probably heard, Quickly just went down again with an injury, so no Quickly in this game. But check it out. In their last 2 games, since Quickly went down again with an injury, they're 2-0 straight up, 2-0 against the spread, against Golden State and Boston. So the Raptors, Emmanuel Quickly gets hurt. Then they go out and beat Golden State, who is struggling, and Boston, who's also struggling. But still, this is the Raptors. They just beat the Warriors and the Celtics. And what makes it even weirder, look at the left side of this graphic. How did they beat these two teams? Defensive rating and a slow pace. 94 average possessions here. That's a super slow pace. A 105.3 defensive rating. So let me get this straight. Quickly gets hurt. The Raptors go and beat Golden State and Boston by playing a slow pace and locking down on the defensive side of the ball. Didn't have that one on my bingo card, but you love to see it, man. The Raptors look good the last couple games. That being said, we do have to mention that Toronto's seen Milwaukee twice already this year, and they were unable to score points in either game. They were 0-2 against the spread, 0-2 straight up in their 2 matchups against the Bucks. Offensive rating below 94. That's disgusting. So both times the Raps saw Milwaukee this year, they were unable to score points. And honestly, I don't see how this one's any different. This is a Raptors offense that needs to get to the rim. They like to attack the basket. The problem is Milwaukee's got all that size down there, and they're always a great rim protection defense. In the last 10 games, they're 10th in defensive efficiency at the basket. So I expect Toronto's offense to struggle for a 3rd time against this Milwaukee Bucks defense. And this is a Bucks team that looks pretty good, by the way, recently. In their last 6 games, they're 4-2 against the spread, 5-1 straight up. Now, if you are looking to back Toronto here, you can point at the transition. Toronto 4th in transition frequency. That does play into the weakness of the Bucks defense. But we just pointed out in the last 2 games without Quickly that the Raps have actually slowed the pace down. So I'm really not sure what to expect from Toronto offensively. I do know that they probably will struggle to score points here. As far as the Bucks offense, I mean, they run a lot of isolation possessions with Dame and Giannis, and the Raptors are 28th in defensive efficiency against isolation. So, I guess the Bucks should probably score against the Raptors defense, but like I said, weirdly, the Raptors defenses look really good in the last couple games. I guess I'll say Raptors plus the points are passed, but I can tell you that there's probably no way in hell I actually place a bet on this one. Next game, Utah on the road in New Orleans. Pelicans are laying 10. I see a couple 10.5s. This was at 9 earlier. Clearly, action coming in on the New Orleans side. Total sitting at 230.5. Projected score 112.9, 107.7 in favor of New Orleans. As far as the last 10 games, the Jazz are 19th in offensive rating, 13th in defensive rating, 20th in terms of strength of schedule. The Pelicans 10th, 23rd, 28th. So why is this line 10.5 then? We're looking at the recent production, and these two teams look pretty even on paper. Well, right here, the Jazz injury report. There's no Markkanen, no John Collins, obviously no Taylor Hendricks. He's been out for 3 months now. No Jordan Clarkson, no Walker Kessler either. So this Jazz team is a mess right now in terms of injuries. That being said, something that's kind of interesting, since Jordan Clarkson got hurt, which was 7 games ago, the Jazz are 6-1 against the spread. So when Jordan Clarkson went down with an injury, if you've been blindly betting Utah since then, you're actually doing pretty well. 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games since Jordan Clarkson got hurt. And in the games without Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson, this is recently, 2-1 against the spread, 2-1 straight up. Both these games within the last 2 weeks. Look, I'm not saying this means we bet Utah. I'm just saying the Jazz team with this injury report, it might not be a blind fate. I mean, they are playing tough. They're covering the number. I wouldn't call this Jazz team with the current injury report, I wouldn't call them a blind fade at all. Now, on the Pelicans side, they're actually in pretty good shape here. It looks like Zion's going to play. We haven't seen much of that this year. Still no Herb Jones, still no Brandon Ingram, although I do think Brandon Ingram is returning soon. But, I mean, all the injuries the Pelicans had. You got Alvarado healthy now, Trey Murphy, DeJounte Murray. They've had all kinds of problems. This is about the healthiest the Pelicans have been in 2 months. So this is actually a positive injury report for New Orleans here. And this is a Pelicans team that's playing better basketball as of late. In their last 8 games, they're 6-2 against the spread, 5-3 straight up. Compare that to the previous 11 games where they had lost 11 in a row. 0-11, 4-7 against the spread. Look, the Pelicans are playing better basketball. They're healthier than they have been. Zion's going to play. I get it. I get why this line has climbed up to 10, but I think you're crazy if you're laying double digits with this Pelicans team right now. You want to know how many games the Pelicans have won by double digits this year? 3. And 1 was the first game of the year against the Bulls. So since the second game of the season, the Pelicans have won 2 games by double digits this season. Both were against the Wizards. So I don't know how you can lay 10, 10.5 to a Jazz team that just continues to cover regardless of what the injury report says. So I would lean towards Utah, but good Lord, man, this is ugly. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to wait it out. Clearly, the market is pushing this number up. This number was at 9 as recent as an hour ago. So in the last hour, it's moved up to 10. I'm seeing 10.5s. I'm going to wait it out. If I can get a Jazz plus 12.5, plus 13, screw it. I'll put a few dollars on the Jazz. But yeah, I don't feel overly confident about it. I'll say Jazz or pass next game. Next up, we got Denver on the road in Miami. And I think this might be my favorite pick of the night. But hold on. There's a lot of moving parts in this one. We'll talk about it. But I think as far as the matchup, I think this might be my favorite. Either this one or the next one. The next two, I think, are my favorite picks of the night. So the Heat are now laying 2. It looks like the 2.5s are gone. Total sitting at 224, 224.5. Let's take a look at the matchup. Projected score: Nuggets 109.86, Heat 108.66. The Heat have been playing some defense. You can see here, last 10 games, 11th in defensive rating, 3rd in defensive rating in the last 5 games. Nuggets have been playing some offense. Actually, in the last 10 games, the Nuggets are a top 10 offensive and defensive team, and they've done it against a stronger schedule than the Heat. 12th in strength of schedule in their last 10, Heat 25th. Couple injury question marks on the Denver side. Both Aaron Gordon and Jokic both listed as questionable, so obviously these are huge. We need to know if these guys are playing. On the Miami side, might be the return of Jimmy Butler. His suspension's up, his 7-game suspension. He's not on the injury report, which means I think Jimmy Butler is going to play in this game. So Nuggets, Heat, what do we think about this matchup? Well, right off the bat, I like this for the Heat right here. The Nuggets this year, they like to get out and run in transition. They're 6th in transition frequency. It's crazy. It's the complete opposite of what the Nuggets were doing last year. But they like to get out and run. Miami does not let you get out and run. I mean, that's for multiple years now. Spoelstra's not going to let you run up and down the court on them. They're 3rd in transition frequency on the defensive side of the ball, 6th in points per game allowed in transition. So I like that for the Heat. They're a defense that doesn't let you get out and run. Denver is an offense that likes to get out and run. Another thing I like for the Heat defense here is Denver is an offense that needs to get to the basket. In fact, no NBA offense has taken more shots at the basket than the Nuggets. They're 1st in shot frequency at the rim on the year, 1st in the last 10 games. Miami doesn't let you get to the basket. They're 5th in defensive frequency at the rim, 3rd in the last 10 games. So I like that for the Heat. Those shots that the Nuggets love to take down at the rim might not be there. Miami might not let them get down there. And this is a Heat defense that's playing really well right now. I know they didn't look great in their last game on the road in LA. Trust me, I know I paid for it. I took the under in that game at 218, closed at 214. The Heat had a poor defensive game. Defensive rating over 123, effective field goal percentage over 59%. It was a bad game. But if you look at the 5 games before that, I mean, a defensive rating below 103, effective field goal percentage below 49%. That one bad game against the Lakers, you take that out, Miami's playing some defense recently. This is a team that's playing good defense right now. And on the season, the Nuggets are just 5-9 straight up, 5-9 against the spread against top 10 defenses this year, which in my opinion, the Miami Heat most definitely are. In fact, in the last 5 games, I believe they're 3rd in defensive efficiency. So I like this for Miami. Denver struggled a little bit when they've seen elite defenses. Miami's been playing great defense back at home, coming off a bad game. I like this matchup for the Heat defensively. Now, you might be saying, Kyle, what about the Heat offense, though? You cannot trust Miami to score points. And I mean, you wouldn't be wrong. Miami's been an inconsistent offense. I get it. And I mean, if you look at this chunk of games right here, Denver's actually been playing some good defense. From January 8th to January 14th, defensive rating at 103, effective field goal percentage below 48%. So for a 4-game stretch here, just a few days ago, Nuggets are playing some defense. That being said, let's look at the opponents. You got the Clippers, not a great offensive team. The Mavericks with no Luka and Kyrie. The Mavericks with Kyrie only. I don't know if Kyrie played in the first game or the second game, but Kyrie played in one of those 2 games. But still, the Mavericks, who have been terrible since Luka got hurt. And then you got the Nets, who might be the worst NBA offense I've ever seen in my lifetime of being an NBA fan. I don't know if I've ever seen an offense as bad as the Nets are right now with the injuries. So yeah, the Nuggets defense looks pretty good over this 4-game stretch. Got to consider the opponents. If you look at the last 2 games where they played decent offenses, January 7th against Boston, January 15th against Houston, the Nuggets defense looked terrible. I mean, Houston did whatever they wanted against this Nuggets defense. So as a whole, you look at the Nuggets' last 6 games, it looks like they're playing solid defense. In my opinion, they're really not. They just had a 4-game stretch where they saw some bad offenses. Now, you might be saying, well, Kyle, I don't think this Miami offense is any good. I would classify them as a bad offense. Okay, like I said before, that's fair, but Jimmy Butler's supposed to be playing in this game, in this Miami offense. Say what you want about it. It's significantly better when Jimmy Butler plays. In Miami's last 24 games, Jimmy Butler has played in 12 of them. In the 12 games without Jimmy Butler, the offensive rating's below 108, offensive rebound rate at 22%, effective field goal percentage below 53%. Terrible offensive numbers in their 12 games without Jimmy Butler. But look at the right side of this graphic. In the 12 games that Jimmy Butler played, in their last 12 games with Butler on the floor, these are actually solid offensive numbers here. Offensive rating over 116, almost 9 full points better than their offensive rating in the games without Jimmy Butler. Effective field goal percentage over 56%. Even the offensive rebounding rate is way up. So this Heat offense, yeah, I know it's not that reliable, but no question they are much better with Jimmy Butler on the floor, which is why I like the Heat here. I like Miami. Here's the thing. I haven't bet it yet. It was at 2.5. Circa and Pinnacle dropped it down to 2. So clearly, it looks like they're taking some Denver money. I don't see any reason to rush it. I mean, I'm a little worried about Jokic getting ruled out, and then all of a sudden we're looking at Miami -6. So I really don't know how to play this one yet. I know I like the matchup for Miami on both sides of the ball, actually. I think it's a good matchup for the Heat defense, and I think the Heat offense if Butler plays. So I like the matchup for the Heat. It just seems the market's moving the number the other way. So I'm waiting it out, but I can say 95% certainty I will have a bet on Miami before this game tips off. I'll let you know on the live show what I ended up doing, or you can just go type show sauce in the Discord and it'll show you all my open bets. As of right now, I do not have a bet on the game, but I can tell you I will be betting the Heat at some point. Let's move on to the next one. We got Charlotte at Chicago. Looks like the Bulls are laying 4 or 4.5. Total sitting at 235, 235.5. And I do have my eyes on this game. It'll be a very brief description. Just look at the pace here. Bulls second in pace on the season, second in the last 5 games. Hornets were running a slow pace earlier when LaMelo Ball was hurt. But since LaMelo Ball returned to the lineup, I mean, last 5 games, they're 9th in pace. We should see an extremely fast-paced basketball game here. I know neither of these offenses are great, but got to keep in mind the Hornets numbers are skewed by the games without LaMelo Ball. I like the game to move at 1 billion miles an hour. I like points. So I'm considering an over here, kind of waiting to see what the market does. In terms of injuries, I don't think Josh Okogie's going to make his Hornets debut yet. We'll see. Trey Mann is still out. On the Chicago side, we got no Torrey Craig still. Josh Giddey's listed as questionable as well, and obviously if I'm going to be betting an over, I'd like to see Josh Giddey out there. This is another one where I like it. I do think the over's the move here. I think this should get up over 240, but as of right now, I haven't pulled the trigger on it, but I do like the over in this one. Let's move on to the next game, and the next game is... what's next? Oklahoma City on the road at Dallas. Dallas catching 7.5. Total sitting at 222.5. This number was just at 6.5 like 30 minutes ago, so it must have just moved to 7.5. Projected score 115 to 113 in favor of Oklahoma City. I don't I mean, I don't know how much I really want to say about this game. Obviously, Oklahoma City's been significantly better. Last 10 games, we're talking about 6th in offensive rating, 1st in defensive rating, and that's against the 3rd strongest schedule. They just beat the life. Wow. They beat Cleveland up bad. I'm just happy it got over the total. Meanwhile, Dallas in their last 10 games, 24th in offensive rating, 22nd in defensive rating. And I mean, the story with Dallas is they need Luka Doncic back. Last 10 games without Luka Doncic, 1-9 against the spread, 2-8 straight up. He is not returning for this game, or at least I don't think he's returning as far as I saw. Probably should look into that a little deeper. I don't think Luka's back yet. No Derek Lively Jr. as well, which really hurts. I think Kyrie might play. Obviously, that's huge if Kyrie Irving's going to play, but still, I just don't trust this Dallas Mavericks team at all. And yeah, and it's a back-to-back in Oklahoma City coming off a huge game against Cleveland. They won by like 40 points. Like, it wasn't exactly a stressful performance there. They had their foot off the gas the entire second half. The game was over. So I really don't know if the back-to-back comes into play. On the Oklahoma City side, there's still no Chet Holmgren. There's still no Isaiah Hartenstein. As far as betting the game, I mean, I guess if Kyrie's going to play and you're going to give me a plus 7.5 with Oklahoma City in a back-to-back, I would consider Dallas plus 7.5. You know what? Maybe Dallas team total over, because Oklahoma City's defense hasn't been as good without Hartenstein and Holmgren, although they played great against Cleveland. So I'd probably go Dallas team total over if Kyrie plays, but this is a weird one. So I'll say Dallas team total over depending on the status of Kyrie. Let's move on to the next game, which is Memphis on the road at San Antonio. Spurs catching 2 or 2.5, depending on your sportsbook. Total sitting at 239 or 239.5. Projected score 118.6 to 118 in favor of Memphis. Last 10 games, Memphis 11th in offensive rating, 25th in defensive rating, 1st in pace, 4th in strength of schedule. Spurs have been playing some good basketball as well, though. 18th, 5th in the 6th strongest schedule. So the Spurs have been playing some good basketball. As you probably know, these two teams just played. I took Memphis team total under. It didn't cash. It looked great in the first half. They had 51 points at half, but they just went absolutely nuclear in the second half. And what Ja Morant did to Wemby was, if you haven't seen that clip, I mean, Ja Morant put Wembanyama on an absolute poster, just yammed on him. That was crazy looking. So I'm not going to repeat everything I said from the game a couple nights ago. I do think the Spurs defense is a tough matchup for Memphis. They're pretty good against the fast break. They're elite at locking down the paint. They're one of the best interior defenses in the NBA. Memphis is an offense that likes to score on the interior. Ja Morant is listed as questionable, so I do think the Spurs get him back. If Ja Morant doesn't play, I definitely would love to bet the Spurs, but a lot of moving pieces. They just played. Memphis in the second half looked just so much better. They look like the significantly better team. Ja Morant listed as questionable makes this weird, so I guess I'll say Spurs. I haven't bet this one yet. We'll talk about it on the live show. I'm not opposed to betting this game, but as of right now, with Ja Morant listed as questionable, I don't see any reason to put any money down. Last game up, we got Brooklyn on the road in LA. Lakers are laying 11.5. Total sitting at 216.5, 217. And hear me out. I kind of want to bet the Nets here, and I know the Nets are just like the laughing stock of the NBA right now. I actually don't have any graphics queued up for this one, so I'm just going to share my thoughts. It'll be brief. The Nets, the team they've been rolling out there, is not the Nets team we're going to see playing in this game. Ben Simmons is going to play. D'Angelo Russell returns for a revenge game against the Lakers. Nick Claxton is going to play. Cam Johnson is listed as questionable. He might play. I'm not trying to tell you that the Nets are a good team. I'm just saying the embarrassment that has been the Nets team we've watched as of late, that's not going to be the team that's playing in this game. The Nets beat the Lakers outright last year. I remember I had Nets money line. It was a big upset. I could see D'Angelo Russell having a real hot shooting night against his old team. 11.5. I mean, this Lakers team hasn't been all that good. Their defense is abysmal right now. I feel like this number's too big, considering the Nets are healthier in this game than they have been in a while. So Nets plus 11.5, maybe a sneaky Nets money line. I'm just saying. I'm probably going to bet the Nets in this one. I haven't yet, but I think I'm going to bet. Yeah, I'm going to bet the Nets. I'm probably going to bet it right after I'm done recording. Yeah, we'll talk about it on the live show, 4 p.m. Eastern time. I got Ski and Chris joining for the NBA. Actually, we're doing college basketball first at 4 p.m. Eastern time because Toast has to do something. So 4 p.m. Eastern time, we'll do college basketball. NBA will probably be like 4:15. We'll breeze through them quick. If you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. Let's have ourselves a good one. Please remember to bet responsibly. Hit me up in the Discord if you need me.